Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 24th of September. Today we have some dates, so let's start. Today is the second day of the referendum in the south of Ukraine on the territories that is under Russian control. If we are talking about the situation by the yesterday evening, and if we are talking about Kherson region, around 15% of the locals have already voted. If we're talking about Zaporizhzhia area, around 20% have voted, and the same picture in Donetsk and LPR region, a little bit more than 20% have already voted in this referendum. I believe that by this evening we are going to receive another update about the situation, so let's follow the situation. Now let's talk about the front lines, and the only thing I would like to add before we start that the front line is stable. And we can say that the situation, if we're talking about the Russian side, their situation is stable, difficult, but not critical, difficult, but stable. And if we're talking about the Ukrainian side, if the Russian situation is stable, that means that we can say that the Ukrainian situation is critical. Now let's discuss the front lines. And first we're going to discuss Kherson district. Today we got some updates from the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. We haven't received any reports about any counter-offensive operation of the Ukrainians in this area. There are some updates that the Ukrainians are moving more and more forces in direction of Вознесенск, Высокополье, Arkhangelskaya, Novovoznесенskaya, Vremovka, that Ukrainians are collecting forces there, and maybe very soon they will try to make another attempt of offensive operation in this area. If we are talking about the Andreev bridgehead, there were no updates. The Ukrainians didn't make any attempt, and the Russians are not counter offensive back. But the important update from this area is that Ukrainians, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense report, were attacked in this town Ternovka, and as a result of this attack, the Ukrainians lost around 200 soldiers and 19 armored vehicles. To be more precise, the Russians were saying about this town Ternovka and about area around Nikolaev. So there's the Russians during the previous 24 hours attacked 28th Brigade, 59th Brigade and 61st Brigade near Nikolaev and near Ternovka, and the total losses of Ukrainians in these two areas was around 200 soldiers and 19 armored vehicles. Furthermore, the Russians attacked a small base near Nikolaevka, this one Kalinovka, and as a result of that attack, the Ukrainian losses was around 300 soldiers. This is, and we're talking about the brigade that were located there. The Russians are saying that foreign volunteers were located in this area, and the Russians were attacking the foreign volunteers. So as you can see, as a result of the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians lost in this area around 500 soldiers just as a result of rocket and artillery attacks. If we're talking about other updates on this area, there were no more updates. So the situation is stable. The civilians are continue voting in this area. So that's it. Now we're moving to the Zaporizhzhia area. The Ukrainians are continue shelling this town, this area. They are continue shelling Energodar and Ukraine, the Zaporizhzhia power plant. They're continuous shelling the towns in this area, but if we're talking about the losses or any progress, there were no updates from the Russian Ministry of Defense, so that means that they changed their focus from this area. The only update from this area is that, if you remember yesterday, I told you that Ukrainians sent some commandos in this area that managed to penetrate the Russian defense. They were using the Russian soldiers' uniform, but there was spotted, and today we got report that commandos were spotted and destroyed. If we are talking about Donetsk area, yesterday I told you that it was a very nice day, that no matter that there is a referendum in this town, the Ukrainians didn't attack and didn't shell this town almost entire day, but starting this morning the Ukrainians continue shelling this area. As you can see, there is a lot of icons, a lot of fire things, and I believe that today we are going to receive more updates about the losses among civilians. So yesterday we talk one thing, but today we got totally another picture. If we are talking about the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, they reported today that the Russians continue offensive operation in direction of Opotne from Spartak, from this position. This position the Russians managed to take months ago, and there are a lot of trenches, so they're just trying to reduce and destroy all the trenches on their way in direction of Vadiana and Opotne. This is not an easy job, and I believe that if the Russians are not planning to move their reinforcement in this area like this week or from the mobilization, I believe that the Russians will spend maybe months just to take control over the north of Donetsk. If we're talking about the losses from this area, the Russians didn't provide any information about that. Now we are moving to Bakhmut area. As you can see, if we're talking about the Russian side, the town by the name of Gorlovka is under very heavy artillery fire. There were no updates about the loss among civilians, but I believe that there were. So for now, there is just like this situation that Ukrainians are reducing Gorlovka as much as possible during the referendum day. Now we are moving to Bakhmut and Siversk bridgehead. Today we got some updates from this area, and the important one is that the Russians are saying that Ukrainians were trying to attack with the 10th brigade in direction of Berestova. This small town Berestova, this town was taken by the Russians somewhere like a month and a half ago, and during the counter-offensive operation in Kharkiv area, the Ukrainians had started their offensive operation in direction of Sporne, and the Ukrainians managed to take control over this town. And these days they were trying to do the same with Berestova, but the Russians spotted this offensive operation, and they start artillery preparation, and as a result of attack of 10th brigade, Ukrainian 10th brigade, their losses was around 48 soldiers and around 4 armored vehicles. If we are talking about Bakhmut, today we got another update that the second bridge in this area was destroyed. If we take a look at the Western sources map, this is our Bakhmut, Artyomovsk. So we can say that the Ukrainians have already destroyed 2 bridges in this area. A few days ago, they destroyed the main central bridge, and today we got report that Ukrainians destroyed another bridge on the south from this area. Let's take a look at this map one more time. We can say that this is the second bridge between, so they destroyed this bridge. I'm not sure about the status of this bridge. Maybe this bridge was destroyed many days ago, but I believe that there is still some connection with the Ukrainian mainland. But if the Russians are planning to continue their offensive operation in the east part of Bakhmut, all these bridges will be destroyed sooner or later. If we're talking about the losses or any report from the Russian side, there were no updates, just about the counter-offensive operation in direction of Berestova, in direction of this town. Now we are moving to one of the most important area these days, to the Lyman bridgehead, to this area. Today we got a lot of updates from this area, but if we summarize everything that we have, we see that the Ukrainian counter-offensive operation in this area was defeated. They couldn't achieve success in this area. They couldn't take Lyman under their control. They couldn't take Yampol under their control. They didn't develop any offensive operation in direction of Kremenna or Dibrova. There are very heavy clashes around Lyman, to be more precise, there are very heavy clashes near Novoselovka and Drobyshevo. These 2 towns is the most important, and the Ukrainians do have possibility to develop their offensive operation, because as you can see, Novoselovka and Drobyshevo is very close to the forest, so it is very easy for the Ukrainians to move a lot of infantry to this area, but they are not able to move their armored vehicles, because it is very difficult to cross a forest with armored vehicles, and there are not much places where these armored vehicles can leave the forest and start offensive operation in direction of this town. But if we're talking about Novoselovka, this village is very close to forest, so that's why the south part of Novoselovka, this part is under Ukrainian control, but the Russians are saying that there are just ruins in this area. The entire village was reduced till ground. There is no buildings in this town, everything destroyed. But anyway, the Ukrainians are trying to use even these destroyed constructions at the defense area and are trying to develop their offensive operation in the north part of Novoselovka. But north part of Novoselovka is under Russian control. They are not planning to leave this area, to move from this area, so we'll see and we'll follow the situation. If we are talking about this bridgehead, the situation, there are a lot of different updates from different sides. Sometimes the updates are totally opposite, because as you can see, if you take a look at the Russian sources map, there are a lot of lines like green line, gray line, but I can't understand which town is under which control, who controls Rubtsy, Lazovo, who controls Korov Yar. I believe that Lazovo and Rubtsy is under Ukrainian control, because they were trying to develop their offensive operation from this bridgehead in direction of Redkadub, but they were defeated in this area. Krivoy Korov Yar is in the gray zone. There are heavy battles in this town, but anyway, the Ukrainians couldn't develop any offensive operation, any bridgehead in this area, and they stopped. The Russians are saying that Ukrainians are moving more and more reinforcement in this area, using crossing some pontoon bridges on Siversk Donetsk River, and they're trying to accumulate more forces. Today we got some update that the Ukrainian Minister of Defense Zaluzhny asked Zelensky to focus all his forces, all his power in this area, and try to break the situation and to take these towns. And if the Ukrainians are able to take these towns, they will be able after that to develop their offensive operation in any direction in this area. But for now, they still can't crack this nut, and so let's follow the situation. If we're talking about this entire area, the Russians reported that during the previous 24 hours they attacked Ukrainians in town by the name of Shturova. This town is located right in front of Lyman, and the Ukrainians were planning to collect some feast, and after that they were planning to use this feast and attack Lyman in front. Furthermore, the Russians are saying that they attack a lot of Ukrainian groups near Kupiansk in this area. As a result of the previous 24 hours attacks in this area, the Ukrainians lost around 140 soldiers and 19 armored vehicles. If we're talking about Kupiansk, there were no updates from this area. The Ukrainians are blocked in this area. They can't develop their offensive operation. Or the bridge, the Oskol River, is under very heavy Russian artillery control, so it's not very easy to cross this river using like convoys or something like this. The only possibilities that Ukrainians have, they can cross this river using one armored vehicle, like they can use just one attempt to use just one armored vehicle to cross. They can't cross with the groups, with the convoys, because all this area is under very heavy fire. So that means that they are not able to accumulate enough forces on the Kupiansk bridgehead to develop after that the offensive operation in direction of the mainland of Russian forces. Another important update are coming from Zaporizhzhia. This is the second town where the Ukrainians are trying to develop their situation in their favor. And a few days ago, and even yesterday, there were some updates that Ukrainians managed to cross the river, and that they managed to develop some offensive operation with commandos from this area in direction of Kupiansk. But today we got update that the Russians managed to do some counter-offensive operation, and they managed to push Ukrainians back on the west side and the west bank of the Siversk of Oskol River. So this territory is under total Russian control, and this is the situation on the front lines. As you can see, the situation is stabilized by the Russians. Furthermore, today we got a lot of updates, a lot of media updates from the Russian side about the mobilization forces. Of course, there are some problems in mobilization process, but we need to understand that the previous mobilization, the Russians did the previous mobilization during the Second World War, so we can say that they don't have any experience in this question. If we're talking about Ukrainians, they are pretty experienced in this situation. This process is very, we can say, stabilized from the Ukrainian side. They have possibility to bring more forces, but if we're talking about the Russians, situation is not so good. But if we're talking about volunteers, we can say that there is the same picture as we could see in the Ukraine. A lot of people from the Russians are joining army, and they're not even waiting for any like message to come to the recruit centers and something like this. And furthermore, if we're talking about the Russians, they have a very nice financial motivation, in comparison with the Ukrainians. For example, if every single soldier that was mobilized will receive around, let's say, $6,000 just for signing a contract. Because just if they're mobilized, they will receive around $6,000 immediately. Furthermore, if we are talking about the loans, that these people have loans, of course everybody have loans, and these soldiers have loans as well. They're paying for their apartments, for their houses, for everything they have. And the Russians, as far as I understand, as you know, they have already adopted some laws that are giving them some holidays to pay all these loans and so on. Furthermore, there are a lot of regions in Russian Federation, and every single region pays from the local budget to these soldiers as well. And so that's a lot of money. If we're talking about Russian Federation, we know that their salary is not so high as like in some Western countries, but this money that the Russian Federation are paying to these soldiers are very big if we're talking about the average people, about average salaries in Russian Federation. So that means that there are a lot of people who do want to join army, because this situation can solve a lot of problems with loans, with their debts, and so on. By this evening, I believe we're going to see more updates about the referendums, and tomorrow will be the third day, and I believe that soon we're going to see the first numbers about the process and progress on these votings. Furthermore, today we got some update from some Russian sources that starting on the 27th of September till maybe till 30th of September, the Russians are planning to announce, let's say, military period, some military situation in the border region with Ukraine, because of situation with referendum, maybe because of situation that Ukrainians continue shelling towns along the border with the Russian Federation. So we'll see, and we'll follow the situation as well. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good weekend. Bye bye.